In a bustling town in Uttar Pradesh, India, lived a young man named Fawad who had just turned 18. The town was always alive with familiar sounds. Honking scooters, vendors calling out, the scent of spices blending with petrol from a nearby garage. Fawad's father owned a small grocery shop tucked between a repair stall and a pawn shop, where he sold noodles, snacks, and soap each day. What seemed like ordinary life to others felt like a burden to Fawad. Although he had finished high school, his grades were only average. His father often reminded him, "Son, life won't wait. Either you chase your dreams, or you'll spend your days helping me sell soap and chips." These words cut deeply, yet instead of pushing him forward, they weighed him down. Fawad knew he wasn't stuck because of lack of ability, but because of a strange heaviness, procrastination and laziness. Every day began with a promise to start studying, and every night ended with disappointment. Tomorrow for sure, he told himself again and again. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Fawad found himself trapped in a cycle of delay, unable to break free. One afternoon, as his father was stacking packets of noodles on the shelves, he suddenly looked at Fawad and said, "You know, I wasn't always hardworking. In fact, I was lazier than you." Fawad laughed in disbelief. His father, the man who woke up early every day to run the store, had once been lazy, but his father nodded firmly. "Yes, I had to fight hard against it. Someone helped me change. Do you want to know the secret?" Fawad shrugged. Half curious, half just to end the conversation, he replied, "Sure." His father pointed across the street at an old man sweeping the pavement. "Tomorrow morning, wake up early and ask him why he works at dawn. You'll understand." Fawad rolled his eyes, acting indifferent, but eventually agreed. That night, though he stayed glued to his phone, curiosity lingered. At dawn, when the street was still quiet and only the faint crow of roosters could be heard, he reluctantly dragged himself out of bed. There he saw the frail figure of the old man sweeping, smiling toothlessly. This was Riga Kaka, the man who would soon change his life. One afternoon, as his father was stacking packets of noodles on the shelves, he suddenly looked at Fawad and said, "You know, I wasn't always hardworking. In fact, I was lazier than you." Fawad laughed in disbelief. His father, the man who woke up early every day to run the store, had once been lazy, but his father nodded firmly. "Yes, I had to fight hard against it. Someone helped me change. Do you want to know the secret?" Fawad shrugged. Half curious, half just to end the conversation, he replied, "Sure." His father pointed across the street at an old man sweeping the pavement. "Tomorrow morning, wake up early and ask him why he works at dawn. You'll understand." Fawad rolled his eyes, acting indifferent, but eventually agreed. That night, though he stayed glued to his phone, curiosity lingered. At dawn, when the street was still quiet and only the faint crow of roosters could be heard, he reluctantly dragged himself out of bed. There he saw the frail figure of the old man sweeping, smiling toothlessly. This was Riga Kaka, the man who would soon change his life. The next morning, when the alarm rang at 6 a.m., every part of Fawad's body screamed to stay in bed. His eyes burned, and the warmth of the blanket pulled him back, but the words of Rigu Kaka echoed, "You're not lazy, you're undisciplined." Gritting his teeth, he got up, splashed water on his face, and went to the rooftop. He had no grand plan, just walking in silence. No phone, no distractions, only his own footsteps. By the third day, he added 10 minutes of reading. By the fifth, he tried studying using the Pomodoro method. 25 minutes of focus followed by a 5-minute break. It felt like a game, and for the first time, learning gave him a sense of small victories. Of course, he stumbled. Some days he overslept, other days he barely studied. But instead of beating himself up with "I'm useless," he reminded himself, back to the plan. Slowly, he noticed progress. His once dull eyes now carried determination, and his mind grew sharper and more focused. Silently, his father watched. The man who once feared his son would drown in laziness now saw a spark of fire growing in him. Fawad had truly begun the journey of disciplining himself. Weeks passed, and Fawad began to feel a sense of order in his life. One evening, sitting with his father, he asked, "Why did you send me to Rigu Kaka?" His father smiled knowingly. Because laziness isn't really about sleep or rest. It's about fear. Fear. Fawad frowned. Fear of what? His father replied softly. Fear of starting. Fear of trying and failing. We pretend we're lazy, but really, we're afraid we might not be smart enough, fast enough, or strong enough. The words pierced straight into Fawad's heart. He realized that his endless delays were not because he lacked ability, but because of an unspoken fear. Fear that he wouldn't succeed, fear that he wasn't good enough. Laziness was simply the mask he wore to hide his doubts. But since building discipline, Fawad understood something important. Discipline didn't care if you were talented or not. It only asked you to show up, repeat, and keep moving forward. For the first time, Fawad felt he was winning a battle greater than any exam. The battle against himself. The fear was still there, but he now had the courage to walk past it. 6 months later, Fawad sat in the exam hall, pencil in hand, his heart beat calm and steady. He no longer trembled with anxiety, because the real victory had already been won long before. Discipline had become his armor, shielding him from the fear of failure. When the results came, he wasn't at the very top, but he scored well enough to secure admission into a good college in a nearby city. To Fawad, this wasn't just about education. It was proof of growth. His father embraced him tightly, pride glowing in his eyes, as though his son had conquered the world. Before leaving for college, Fawad visited Rigu Kaka one last time. The old man was still sweeping, steady as ever. Bowing his head, Fawad said, "Thank you. I could never have changed without you." The old man laughed. "I did nothing, son. I only gave you a broom. You swept your own mind clean." As Fawad walked home, a smile spread across his face. He finally understood. Laziness wasn't the enemy. It was a signal that something in his system needed fixing. And the true secret he had discovered was this. Discipline doesn't begin with strength, but with the small promises you keep to yourself every single day. Fawad's story gives us a powerful reminder. Laziness is not weakness, but a signal that we lack the right system in life. Too often, we blame ourselves for lacking motivation, when what we truly need is not more inspiration, but small rules and consistent practice. Discipline doesn't start with great achievements, but with tiny promises to ourselves. Waking up a few minutes earlier, reading a single page, finishing one small task on time. Repeated over and over, these small steps build a larger picture of transformation. Fawad proved that the greatest victory is not about scores or accolades, but about conquering the fear of failure and the trap of procrastination. Once we learn to show up every day, even in small ways, success becomes only a matter of time. The message is clear. Don't wait for motivation. Start with discipline. Discipline is the key that opens the door to the best version of yourself.